only in the sauna, but this is unscheduled. But I did say that I would talk about the Giant Fantasy Survey, so here we are talking about the Giant Fantasy Survey. And yes, I'm wearing a t-shirt in the sauna, and that is because, as we learned in the last one of these, you can't not wear, you can't have the sauna on. The phone overheats. So here we are. Oh, and the reason why I'm still doing it in the sauna is because the sauna is really, really good for sound, because the wood doesn't echo and it's soundproof and all the rest of that. So it's a little faster to set up than my studio, which means in my studio I have to shut down all of the laptops and PCs and so on. So I ran the Giant Fantasy Survey, and my approach with it was basically to throw it out to all of my subscribers here on YouTube, but also I threw it onto Facebook, and there I actually did some paid advertising of it, just a small amount, like $20-30, just to throw it at a wider audience than my subscribers, so that I can sort of attempt to avoid bias in the survey results. Now, I got an excellent response rate on the survey. It hit around 300 odd responses, which is fantastic. I'm really pleased with that. And then plus the results coming in from other people was also great. So what did I learn from this survey? So I think the biggest lesson from the survey is that it's not about people being tired of tropes. It's not even about people being unhappy with tropes or wanting different tropes. No, see, it is instead a truth that it is instead simply so that people want tropes that are well implemented. If I look at something like prophecy, which, a lot of people say, well, readers just don't want prophecy anymore. That's not true. The majority of readers, majority of respondents to the survey was, if done really well, I like this, referring to prophecy. Then there was a couple of neutrals, about 10%, and then there was an unless it's amazing, I dislike this, at 22%. Only 1% said they always hate this. So I would definitely not say that readers are tired of prophecy. Then if we look at the chosen one, which is another one that, people say, oh, well, it's a worn out trope. Nobody wants that anymore. Sure, okay. So 3% said, I always love this about the chosen one. 33% said, if done really well, I like this. 24% said, I'm neutral. 37% said, unless it's amazing, I dislike this. And 2% said, I always hate this. So I would say that the chosen one trope is more worn out than the prophecy trope, but it is still not so that readers hate it all. They just dislike it when it's done poorly, or they want it done really well in order to stand out from all the other chosen ones. So again, it's more about implementation. Even those readers who say, unless it's amazing, I dislike this, if done well, it still stands out for them. They're still happy to read about chosen ones. Then we have the accompaniment to the chosen one, the Dark Lord. This one actually surprised me. 13% said they always love this. So 13% of readers literally always want the Dark Lord as a trope. They're like, no, I love it. It doesn't matter how it's done. Then if done really well, I like this, was 36%. I'm neutral towards this was 29%. Unless it's amazing, I dislike this was 20%. And I always hate this was 1%. So again, it's about how well you do that Dark Lord. It's not that people dislike a Dark Lord, it's that there's a lot of them that are done poorly that they don't like. And the same with femme fatale, which was the last trope that I rated. 8%, I always like this. 33%, if done well, I really like this. I'm neutral towards this, 31%. And unless it's amazing, I dislike this, 24%. And I always hate this. This was actually the highest percentage at 3%. And I think that is because the femme fatale is so easy to do wrong. It is so easy to implement the femme fatale in a way that comes across as overpowered, or turns the guy into a dumbass, or turns the girl into a dumbass, or just really doesn't work. The femme fatale is a hard trope to get right, I think. And I think that's why it's got a higher percentage of I always dislike this, because those people have literally never encountered a femme fatale that they liked, which is certainly possible. Then we come to number of points of view. Okay, so that was the trope section. And I will do a long format video on tropes and on what I take from this in conjunction with the text replies that people gave, which is what's taking a little bit longer on my analysis, because obviously analyzing the numbers questions is really easy. But analyzing the text responses takes a bit of time. And if you're curious, I actually do have a degree in statistics. Well, my degree is in mathematics, but I had statistics, economics, mathematics, and computer science as my major subjects at university. So weirdly, weirdly, I am actually well qualified to look at data and analyze it. So what I'm busy doing with the text responses is I'm amalgamating them into word clouds and then pulling out sentences and sentiments and things like that, and then combining that with the numerical data from the multiple choice questions to determine what it is that readers really dislike and like, and so on. So the other numerical question that we had was number of points of view. Now, this was very interesting to me because I have a very definite limit on my point of view characters. I do not like more than 3 or 4 characters as a point of view characters. My upper limit is 5. But according to the survey, 45% of readers say they have no upper limit. They love all the POVs. You can hit them with every single POV, they love them all. So I found that that was very, very interesting. Um, but once you go below that, once you hit the point where people say they do have a limit to the number of point of view characters, it goes down to 3 being the most popular. So, of the people who said they do have a limit to the number of POVs, 5 was a 9%, 3 was 22%, 2 was 14%, and 1 was 9%. So, what I take from this is that the majority of readers do want multiple POVs because only 9% want only one POV. So, and that's probably also the people who prefer first person, if I were to think about it. But if people have a limit, they like 3 POVs, and if they otherwise they're like, hit me with all the POVs. I love them all. I have no problems, which was interesting. Then we come to the last of the numerical choices, which is the fantasy level, the word choices, as in the way that you phrase things in your prose, and your fantasy words. And again, here, this was interesting to me. So, talking first about fantasy level. Now, it's a ranking from 1, which is I want a fantasy world with no magic, even just a different Earth, up to high fantasy, right? 44% was high fantasy, 1% was no magic. So I would say that from there, the results are you can go balls to the wall with your fantasy. You do not need to be afraid of readers shying away from multiple, from other sentient races and strange magic systems and fantastical situations. Go for it. Readers apparently love it. high fantasy 44%. And then just below that is 23%, and number three, in the middle of the road between high fantasy and no magic, is 27. And no magic and just above no magic is like a total of 5%. So that is not a popular genre, and I would go wild if I were you with a fantastical. Then word choices. So word choices was a little bit more egalitarian. So I said one in word choices case was completely period appropriate language. So language that fit the historical period that you used as inspiration. And number five in word choices was you're perfectly fine with using the tree was skyscraper tall in prehistoric fantasy. And the results were again very interesting. About 13% wanted period appropriate, and then choice 2 was 36, 3 was 33%, 4 was 11%, and 7% were like it's fine to use skyscraper when describing tree lengths in prehistoric fantasy. So that seems to fall kind of in the middle. People want relatively period appropriate, but not so obscure that they have to go to the dictionary, is how I would read that initial results. And then ranking for fantasy words. So this one was also very interesting. So number one here is all English. Number five is a completely constructed conlang language, so a unique language made up for the world. And the results were all English is only 2%. So I think that most readers of fantasy do want some made up language. Oh, it's super quiet. I am sorry. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how much of a difference it can make by leaning forward into it. I hope that this will help somewhat um, with the quiets. um, so the fantasy words um, on all made up on constructed language was 28%, and in between was like 14% at number two, 32% at number three, 24% at number four. So it was really, really solid. Sorry about the quiet, guys. So it was really very much on the line of readers new um, want new words, fantasy words, but they don't want fully constructed languages necessarily that much. Only 28% of them want that, but they definitely want some fantasy words. That one Zelda guy, no, I'm not. I'm actually South African, ex-Afrikaans, and I live in Finland. So I'm a long way from Britain. Um, and yeah, so my general take on the survey is that readers want fantasy. They want the wonder of fantasy. They want the magic systems. They want the fantastical elements. They want the fantasy words, but they want it also to be accessible. They want fantasy words and fantasy language and fantasy settings to be something that they can access, that they can love. Hello, Mr. Wolf, good to see you. Um, so I think that is what we need to bear in mind as fantasy world builders. Readers want fantasy. They want that love of fantasy. Um, they want to be transported into another world, but they want it to be accessible. So, and that's why I think like high fantasy is rated so highly. And I think that we have such a high preponderance of readers who want fantasy words, and we have such a high number of readers who want period appropriate word choices. Hello, Tubby Wolf. Hello, Shah Coral. Oh, great to see you all. So I think that it is a very, very critical part to world build those elements that make the reader feel as though they are transported to another world, as though they are living elsewhere. And that is what they're looking for in fantasy. And then with regards to tropes, I think the major takeaway from the Giant Fantasy Survey and tropes is it is about how well you implement it. It is not about um, your ability to. It is not about the trope itself. You can have a chosen one. You can have a prophecy. You can have even a femme fatale or a dark lord. Dark lord, very popular. Femme fatale, not so much. The important part is that you make sure you implement it well. In terms of genre, that one Zelda guy that just brought it up, um, readers love adventure fantasy, epic fantasy, that all of the things that you'd expect from people who love high fantasy, right? They are much less interested in grim dark than they are in dark fantasy, which I found very interesting. So grimdark was like 30% of readers. Dark fantasy was well over 50%. So I think that, and looking at the responses, my initial analysis of like why people stop reading a book, my I think that readers of fantasy want the darkness of like terrible choices and all the rest of that come in dark fantasy. But they want also to have hope. They want optimism, right? So they're more interested in Tolkien than in Abercrombie, is my take on that. What would you consider D&D? D&D, to my mind, is um, is a high fantasy setting. It has a lot of magic. It has a lot of elves. It's completely set up to be a high fantasy setting. So that would be my take on it. Yeah, so that is my initial results of the Giant Fantasy Survey. I will be leaning into the Giant Fantasy Survey. I'm already scripting a video on magic systems and what I learned from the survey about how you can make your magic system more engaging for readers, what readers are looking for out of a magic system. And then I will also be doing a general world building, like what is it that really attracts readers to worlds. Um, the Gonzagator 96 asks, how would you work to show elements of a subgenre without isolating your work only to those? So, I mean, the thing about genre is essentially a marketing tool, right? It's so that readers who are interested in a genre can find you. That's why books exists in multiple genre. Like I write epic fantasy, but that epic fantasy also is also dark fantasy because there are dark elements in my epic fantasy. I have blood magic and vampire, well, vampire like, they're not vampires, but they're kind of based on that principle. So so you can include multiple genres into a single genre, but you do need to choose your kind of main genre for your work, which is the one that it predominantly falls into. Like if you're writing a urban fantasy, then write the urban fantasy. It's set in um, a city. That's the principle. Otherwise, it's not really an urban fantasy. Um, I'm not sure if I've answered your question, the Gonzanator 96. But if you want to ask a follow up, you are welcome. Um, but yeah, so I will be doing the video on magic systems, and there will be additional videos on world building coming out, and so on. And I will be also speaking, kind of including the survey results in future videos and so on. So I hope that you all stick around for those videos. I hope that you've enjoyed this quick live stream overview. Sorry about the sound at the beginning. I'll lean into it a bit more. I thought that the mic dB was set higher. And I will see you all soon. Tomorrow, in fact, there is a video coming out about creating trade networks in space, which I hope you will all enjoy. It is going to be slightly more late than normal because I've shifted my publishing time by a few hours so that the videos release a few hours later to fall more in the United States time zone. Okay, have a great rest of your day, guys.